welcome to the ReWatcher. I'm your cult leader, Tom Pot, and I just watched the Fantastic Four from 2005, the first cinematic release of the Fantastic Four. That's right, because last week we watched the unreleased Fantastic Four film, and I probably have a lot more to say about that one than I do about this one, because this one, well, it definitely exists, doesn't it? It's definitely a movie. Based on that, you probably think I don't like this, but you know what? You should like this video, because every Friday this month we are breaking down a Fantastic Four film. So why not subscribe so we don't miss out? And with all that said, let's dive in to 2005's Fantastic Four from director Tim Story, who gave us Barbershop and then made Taxi. And apparently the executives at 20th Century Fox saw Taxi and were so impressed by it that they gave him the Fantastic Four job. I'm not joking, by the way. This is apparently true. The Jimmy Fallon and Queen Latifah vehicle, no pun intended. Actually, you know what, pun intended. That got him this gig. So, hey, for a man with Story in his name, I bet you he knows a thing or two about Story. Well, you wouldn't know it from watching this movie. There's so little to say about the story of the film, because like, there's not a lot of plot. And I guess on paper it's like, hey, it's the Fantastic Four. I mean, you know, they go into space and they get their powers. But it feels like once they get their powers, they don't know what to do. It feels like they just do a lot of faffing around and then they're like, oh, we better get to a finale. So it's not really good. There's not much plot here to make you any bit invested in this film. Now, I will say they make some big changes, some of which I actually, you know what? I don't think there's any change here that's for the worse necessarily. Like, Doom goes into space with them, and I'm like, that's okay. It's kind of weird he got his powers in space, which is something we'll get to a bit more in a minute. They also do a thing where basically he was in a relationship with Sue Storm, or he is in a relationship when the movie starts. It's like a weird love triangle, I guess, but because she used to go out with Reed, and of course eventually she will go out with Reed again. But I find it really, really strange because they don't really do anything with that. It's just an idea they throw out there. It's like, at first I was like, oh, they're making a love triangle, but it kind of, you know, having to go through every single bit of it. But then they never really do anything with it. By the way, Reed and Sue's relationship seemingly ended just because Reed is like, I only care about science, that's my one love. Wow. What an amazing, what an amazing plot that is. Oh, I only care for science. Oh, Reed, if only you could understand the science of love. You know, it's so bad. Their relationship in general is just not really good, but let's talk about the cast on that note in general. So we have Johan Gruffud. Gruffud. He's Welsh. I'm messing up his name. Johan Gruffud is Mr. Fantastic. I think one of those is bound to be right.
Johan Griffith.
He's Mr. Fantastic. Now, he's not terrible. He's decent. I mean, he looks the part, certainly. And that's a minor touch. A minor change to his source material. He gets his grey hair in space. I don't know why. I don't know why he gets his grey hair from space. Why did no one else's hair turn grey? But, you know, I'm fine with that. I suppose, like, the only way they actually explained it in the 94 Fantastic Four and been like, oh, it's been 10 years, he's starting to grey at the temples. I'm fine with it. It's not something I ever gave much thought in general, to be honest. But yeah, he looks the part. He's not terrible. He's decent enough. I don't think he was amazing. But again, like, I think the problem here is that, like, a lot of the material that they're given doesn't do any of the actors any favours. And that's certainly the case for Jessica Alba as well as Sue Storm. She just doesn't have a lot to do. I feel like the movie just has her because she's attractive. And I'm not saying that just because. I'm saying it because there's two scenes in this movie where she's totally weirdly objectified. Like, they're all getting into their space suits, which of course eventually become their Fantastic Four suits. And they're all, like, you know, zipped up like wetsuits or whatever. And hers is of course low cut, baby. It's like, whoa. Wow. That's pretty blatant, movie. And then there's a scene where, for some reason, I made it so that Invisible Woman using her powers, her clothes won't go invisible, so she has to strip off anytime she wants to go invisible. Which leads to an obvious scene where she's in her underwear. And you just know some skeezy executive is like, yeah, get Jessica Alba in her underwear, that will sell this movie. And yeah, apparently that's the case. I looked it up. This scene was literally added after Jessica Alba was cast. You fucking creeps. But yeah, like, there's not a lot of material she's given that's even decent. The relationship between Sue and Reed isn't very good because it just does come down to that thing of like, oh, Reed, you don't understand love and romance. You only understand science and space. Terrible. And again, they also don't do anything with the kind of love triangle element, really. So because of that, it's just very flat. They basically feels like they threw the love triangle in so they could get as many of the main characters as they could into the first 2 minutes of the movie. Like 4 of the characters in the movie are like in the boardroom in like the first 2 minutes in Jerusalem. Which, the boardroom where we meet Doctor Doom, who's really Elon Musky in this. He's into rockets. He's got a statue where he looked the bop off Elon Musk as well. Is Doom any good in this? No. I had to think about it. I really shouldn't have had to think about it. He's just not very good in this. Julian McMahon is okay in this, but again, the material and the direction there's nothing there. They bring him into outer space, and his power, I guess, is that his skin starts turning metal, which is another change in the source material. And I'm like, okay, it's a weird choice. It doesn't look very good. I mean, when he's like mid transformation, like turning into the Metal Man, he just looks like cracked out Dennis Reynolds from It's Always Sunny. It's not very good. But what's also really weird, right, is he has a scar on his face that obviously does metal underneath, and he's slowly starting to turn metal. And they still make the choice to be like, oh, well, his face isn't going to turn metal. Give him a metal mask if he Doom. I'm like, why would you tease his face turning metal and then just not bother anyway? It just seemed like a very strange choice. His mask, by the way, is for humanitarian work. Which, generally, the mask looks okay. It does look really weird. There's one part where the hood is down and you see his little ears. They just doesn't look right. Dr. Doom's metal ears don't look right. In general, though, the costume isn't that bad, actually. If the cloak was a bit more green, a bit more brighter, maybe I'd be into it more. And there's a weird kind of gap between the eyes and the mask that just looks a little bit strange in live action. But it's not that bad. It's pretty good, actually. But Doom in general just isn't very interesting. I feels like they were basically like, hey, there's not a lot going on in this movie. You need to bring Doom in. And they didn't know what to do with it. So I guess like basically the plot in the second act just takes a rest, more or less. Like the basic plot is like, oh, Thing is cranky at his where he is in life and being the Thing. And, of course, Doctor Doom comes in and he's like, oh, just so you know, mate, he's spending an awful lot of time with Sue Storm instead of trying to fix you, isn't he? Ha! And then the Thing is like, oh, you're right, actually. And that's like the plot, I guess. Because he's like, oh, I can kill Reed Richards if I get rid of his bodyguard, who is the Thing. Even though we have a scene where the Thing fights Reed and Reed actually gets the better of him. And actually, I will say, like, as much as there's not a lot of action scenes, there's like 2 action scenes in this whole movie. The best kind of fight scenes are probably when they're fighting each other. There's the Thing versus Reed, where Reed kind of uses, I guess, his brain over brawn. I'll give the movie that, even though, not really. Where he stretches himself around him to kind of, constrict him, which is kind of cool. Because, of course, the obvious reaction you would think is the Thing would win. But that was a bit of fun. And we have the Thing versus Johnny Storm, which is one of the better scenes as far as the actions and them fighting each other goes. It's in front of the X Games, because Radical 2000s, baby. Filled with a load of product placement. There's so much product placement on screen, it's crazy. Including like things for Xbox and, I guess the most creative use of marketing, even though it's so obvious. As soon as I saw this ad, I was like, oh, I know where this is going straight away. They have an ad for Burger King, home of flame grilled burgers. You see where this is going? They knock Johnny Storm into it, he catches fire, and the burgers are flamed. And some marketing executive was just like, oh yeah, well done. They probably got paid extra for that. Reminding them that their burgers are flame grilled. So I probably should talk about Johnny Storm and the Thing in general, because they are the best characters in the movie and probably the best performances in the movie. And I think it is just because they give them more to do. I'm not trying to dismiss the other actors, but also Chris Evans and Michael Chiklis are fantastic. Chris Evans, first of all, the character isn't necessarily likable, but that's Johnny Storm. They make him really radical, It's like, oh, he's snowboarding out of a helicopter. And he gets all the babes and all this rock music anytime he's on screen. And he goes to the X Games just cause. And he does, a couple of flips on fire and that kind of thing. And, he's radical. And that's what they go for. There's one part, like, he's kissing a girl while riding a motorbike while she's in a car. Whoa! Why? It's so stupid. Although there is kind of a funny moment where basically you find out that he crashed in a NASA. He crashed a flight simulator.
They crashed it into a wall. A flight simulator.
Like Homer Simpson.
I'm still not sure how he caused the meltdown. There wasn't any nuclear material in the truck.
That antagonistic kind of relationship between him and the Thing is there as well. And again, the highlight of the movie, because they play off each other really well. And they give the 2 best performances. Michael Chiklis is an excellent version of Ben Grimm. He does a great job as the Thing. Apparently he was like the only fan of the Fantastic Four out of the cast already, and he insisted on wearing the suit. Which, let's talk about the suit. I'm sure he probably regretted that as well, because when it's like 8 hours of makeup or whatever, it looks okay at times. I think I prefer if the suit looked a bit rougher. It still looked kind of strangely smooth, like if there was a bit more edge to it. I think I'd like a bit more detail in the face. It just kind of looks like a big orange kind of paddock. I think if it was had a bit more detail, it would look better. Overall, it's not terrible. There are some times though where you can kind of see the folds in the rubber and the neck. It's not bad. It's admirable. I think it is. I actually think 1994 suit is better. But I do think going forward, the thing should probably be CGI. I think it probably just suits it better, to be honest. And that the good thing is that it doesn't take away from Chiklis's performance at all. He is fantastic. He's someone who I'm like, he deserved better. It's a shame he never really got the right material, because he is fantastic in this film. He just has a really gruff, mannerism to him playing this character that suits the thing down to the ground. Of course, they hide the suit at times by giving them the Ninja Turtles disguise with the hat and the detective coat. And I think he wears that in the comics as well, obviously. But I call it Ninja Turtles because that's what it reminds me of, which is stupid because it just draws more attention, really. Oh no, it's not a big orange man. Oh, it's just a big orange man in a massive detective costume. Which also that reminds me, you got a really awkward power placement with Nike shoes that are like massive. Like, what was the point of that? Yeah, I also should mention this. I heard this, I'm not sure it's true. But Michael Chiklis' wife apparently called into set one time without announcing she was coming, and she saw her husband in full makeup as the thing, and was so distressed by what she saw that she had to be physically escorted from the set in order to compose herself. Right. Okay. That's kind of weird. But, another woman repulsed by the thing is the real villain of the movie, in my opinion. Not Dr. Doom. Fucking Debbie. Who is Debbie? She gets 2 lines, maybe. It's the Thing's fiance. She sees him once on the phone in his detective uniform, and she's like, "Ah!" And she literally screams and runs away from him, like she was Michael Chiklis' actual wife. Yeah, and you're like, "Whoa, that was harsh." She wasn't like, "Are you okay? Is this permanent?" She didn't even ask that. And then in an even funnier moment, it's just at the end of a big action scene, which I'll talk about in a sec. And she just comes out of the crowd with her ring already ready to go and just puts it on the ground and walks off, and we never see her again. I'm like, wow, Debbie's a bitch. Whoa, man, she's really bad. They don't even give her much to justify it. She's just like, oh no, I can't stand the sight of you. Bye. But we should get to that action scene. Probably, one of 2 action scenes that are made properly in the movie, aside from them fighting each other. This is probably the best action scene, but then again, out of the 2, that's not saying much. And yeah, not very good. It's basically, first of all, it's played as the Fantastic Four save the day, but basically they caused all this. The thing is on a bridge being like, oh, this sucks, and the guy is going to jump off the bridge, and I guess the guy was like, oh, I'd rather die by jumping off the bridge than die from the thing, because the thing starts walking after him, and the man's like, oh no, like a total dumbass, then falls and runs to the bridge. And thing jumps down off the bridge and does the shoulder kind of into the truck, which seems really dated. We've seen a load of that kind of thing now, flipping trucks and destroying cars, and that kind of shoulder here, I think, has even been on a few things. But it looks pretty good. And from there, of course, there's big car crashes, explosions, and fire and all that. And the Fantastic Four come to save the day, which is when we get that patented Jessica Alba underwear scene, which makes no sense as well, because it's like, oh, go Sue, you can slip through the crowd, which is weird also that Invisible Woman's just going around naked. That's just very strange. So if she was picking up someone and save someone, you're just pressed against her naked body, you're like, it's kind of weird, isn't it? But even though she does that to slip by the crowd, they just get past the crowd in a minute anyway, without doing any of that stuff. So they all get to use their powers for a little bit. Powers don't look too bad, actually. Reed Richards uses a stretchy arm to save people on a fire truck, I think. Chris Evans' one here, I don't understand at all. He's on fire. There's a little girl who's going to be engulfed by flames, and he jumps in front of her and covers himself and then lights himself on fire. And I'm like, wouldn't that wouldn't she not catch fire as well? You just put yourself on fire holding onto her. But I don't know. I guess the movie doesn't care about it, so why should I? And then Sue obviously uses her force field to contain that explosion. So that's the kind of big action scene. The other big action scene is the ending. which, as we said, Doom is kind of playing Ben Grimm against Reed Richards. He's like, I can turn you back, and he puts him in the kind of fly machine from Cronenberg's thing, which is very relevant when we get to the Josh Trank one. And he loses his powers, which is something the movie doesn't really go back on. Like, if the thing could just become not the thing for a while, he would totally do that, right? But they kind of brush over that. Even at the end of the movie, he's like, I'll find a way to make this work. And it's like, it did work. When he goes back to being the thing. But not before he's like, what have I done? So Doom, tries to pit them against each other and shatter them. And the thing becomes not the thing for a minute. So maybe Debbie should have stuck around a while. But it's okay, actually, because thing does have another interest. Alicia Masters is in this, which is also on the Alicia Masters character is kind of weird, because like it's a real mixed message. It's like she's a blind woman, so it's like, oh, see, I care about the real you on the inside, but also what you're really saying is like, oh, not even like a person with sight could fall in love with you. Think you're that fucking ugly. But yeah, played by Kerry Washington. Wow, what a waste of Kerry Washington. But there you go. So it leads to our big action finale, where the Fantastic Four face off against Doom in a scene that's just not that interesting or good. I guess science saves the day, kind of. They basically all get to... It's really funny, actually, because it starts off with the Thing fighting Doom, and then they all use their powers, but not really. Like, first of all, he tries freezing. Reed. Just not good. I don't know what that's about. It doesn't really matter by the end anyway. So they get into a big fight in the middle of the street, and they all get to use their powers. Johnny, I should mention this as well. One of the other minor plot points, it really reminded me of Ghostbusters.
Don't cross the streams. We'll cross the streams.
They're testing Johnny at one point, and they're like,
any hotter and you're approaching supernova.
Not only could you kill yourself, but you could set fire to Earth's atmosphere and destroy all human life as we know it.
Got it. Supernova. Bad.
By the way, they just get rid of him using extinguishers. Is that all it takes to defeat the Human Torch? If Doom had a fire extinguisher, he would have won. So they're like, don't go supernova. And then, of course, by the end, they're like,
Johnny, supernova. I thought we agreed that was bad. No!
He goes supernova. Sue covers him with a force field. And Doom starts being really, really hot. His clothes melt away. We see a weird naked Doctor Doom in his metal form, which does not look good. He doesn't look like Dennis Reynolds, the Golden God now. He still kind of looks like the weird metal one. He's moved on from crackhead Dennis Reynolds, but he's not at the Golden God stage. He's just a really weird looking one. I don't know, maybe Charlie when he's covered in silver paint. Oh man, that's an Always Sunny one. Oh, you know what? I think I heard recently they wanted the Always Sunny cast to be Fantastic Four, so go on. I'm all for it. I'm practically already there with this film. And when all that is done, first of all, by the way, Thing has nothing to do with this big action scene, really. There's a moment where you literally see them all doing something, and he's just outside the bubble, like, yeah! But then, of course, Reed uses his science brain. See, science saved the day, Sue, not love. He doesn't have to love you. He has to love science, because it's important. But he's like, do you know what happens when when metal that's hot gets cooled, and then Thing jumps into action, by the way. He breaks the fire hydrant. Oh, well done, Thing. Good thing you were there. And Reed turns himself into a weird kind of like slide to shoot water at Doom, who is frozen in a kind of metal statue. And that's the Fantastic Four saving the day. Way, they won, kind of. What a very uninteresting scene. I mean, I guess it's kind of clever, but it doesn't make for a very good scene all the same. And because of that, they defeat him. Doom is like shipped to Latveria. We get an end credit scene before it's really like before post credit scenes were a thing, but it's barely even post credits. It says at the end, and then we get it. They're like, oh, it takes 13 days to get to Latveria or whatever. So I don't know. I actually haven't seen Rise of the Silver Surfer. I assume he's in it in some form. I don't know though. I wouldn't care if he is or not, to be honest. The only cool thing I did think with Doom is that he kills one person, and that looked really graphic. He like shoots a hole right through him, like Jesus. We also get Stan Lee in the film as Willie Lumpkin. I think it's the only time. It was at one stage, maybe it's changed, but I think it was the only time that Stan Lee played a character he created. I suppose he played a Watcher, so I don't know if that counts, but that's kind of interesting. But not really. He gives them their post at the Baxter Building. That isn't interesting. Why did I say that was interesting? And yeah, that is the Fantastic Four from 2005. Why did it come out so bad? Like, as I said, this is like the epitome of early 2000s superhero film. It's like, didn't have to be very good as long as it looked kind of like the films, and as long as they made the superpowers look good, we were all okay seeing it. And we were okay seeing it, because it did well enough to justify a sequel. As for why this one kind of didn't work out, the year before this came out, we had The Incredibles, often jokingly referred to as the best Fantastic Four film, which, pretty much is. And apparently, they had to make massive changes to the film because they were like, oh, the Incredibles made fun of some of these things, and there were some things where it was similar. Because of that, they had to change the film at a cost of nearly $20 million. And there was a lot of script changes, and apparently it majorly messed with the finale, which explains why the ending scene is just so meh. And I guess the film in general is meh, to be honest. That's the word of the day here. Meh. I guess the only other thing I want to mention is the fact that this is the Fantastic Four franchise never really got up and running, but at some point Fox owned the rights to this, Daredevil, and X-Men, obviously, and this was nearly the only time they crossed over, because there's a deleted scene where Reed Richards' face turns into Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. It looks terrifying. Now, maybe the fact it was deleted is why they never, they could have made it look better if it wasn't going to be a deleted scene, but it is kind of weird. And it would have been just a weird bit of trivia, because these, of course, never crossed over. I was going to say that might be for the best, but, just around this time, the X-Men series was going to be at its absolute lowest point anyway, because it was going to have X-Men The Last Stand and X-Men Origins Wolverine. So maybe they deserved each other. So that is it. The 2005 Fantastic Four film. It's okay. It's a breezy watch. It's the sort of film where if it was on and you just couldn't find the TV remote, you'd be like, all right. It's not bad enough that you'd rush to change the channel. It's not good enough that you'd watch it ever. Otherwise, I kind of was hoping that I might come back to this film and be like, hey, now I can appreciate this and this, and I don't really. I appreciate Chickless as the thing. I think Chris Evans is a pretty good Human Torch. I think the suits look okay. The powers look decent. The effects on the whole have held up, except sometimes Reed does like a stretchy face that looks a little off, but it looks fine. Actually, the thing that looks the most is the thing in space. They do like a weird effect there that just doesn't look fully right. And they also never really explained their powers, by the way. I remember when we were talking about the 94 Fantastic Four, I was saying oh, they were like, oh, well, you stretch yourself too thin. And there is a stretchy pun at the start, but that's seemingly not the reason. I think they were going for an elemental thing, which is actually what I mentioned in the last episode as well, if you want to go back and check that out. But also then you're like, why is Doom metal? Which, we don't get an answer to that question. We don't even get an answer as to why these are the powers. Will we get an answer in the sequel? Probably not. But I've never seen it. And that's why I'm slightly looking forward to it. I think it's meant to be slightly better, which wouldn't be hard if it had a plot, which this one doesn't really have. But the only thing I know about it is obviously the Silver Surfer's in it, and there's a wedding in it because Reed and Sue are engaged at the end of the movie, and he kind of proves that basically, hey, we can have science and love mixed together. He gives her as a gasket from a rocket. That's pretty corny. Yeah, a broken gasket. So that's a little hokey, but I'm sure Reed Richards is a bit of a cheeseball anyway, so that works. And of course, our film ends with Johnny. There's a lot of trailer shots in this. One of them was the shoulder thing. One of the trailer lines that I remember hearing everywhere was like,
Oh, you're hot.
Why, thank you. So are you.
and also him doing the Fantastic Four logo in the sky, which also I don't know if it makes sense, because he never leaves a massive flaming trail behind him in the rest of the movie. Just this moment. And there's another point where there's a missile chasing him. I want to just get this nitpick out of the way. I assume it's a heat-seeking missile, right? He jumps off a balcony because the missile is going to hit where Sue Storm is and he is, and the missile follows him. Why does it follow him if he's normal? He doesn't light on fire, but the missile's already chasing him before he's on fire. And then he lights a barge on fire and the missile goes after the barge. I mean, I guess he can change his temperature or whatever. I hope no one was on that barge. But again, why dwell on it? Because obviously no one dwelled on this film, from the people who made it to the people who watched it. But it did lead to a sequel. Welcome to the ReWatcher. I'm your cult leader, Tom Bott, and I just watched Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. And before I go into it, why don't you give this video a like? Because, of course, I'm going to say whether I like this film or not. It's apparently considered by many to be the best Fantastic Four film. Which is, man, that's a very low bar. But, of course, I'll be watching the worst Fantastic Four film next week. So why don't you subscribe so you don't miss it? And without further ado, let's talk about Rise of the Silver Surfer. Because as I mentioned last week, I haven't seen this one. This is the only Fantastic Four film, aside from the unreleased one, that I haven't seen. It's the only big screen one that I hadn't seen. And the discourse I'd always heard around was, hey, it's better than the last one. And I suppose it is. It's that kind of improvement where it's such a minor improvement that you look at it and you're like, is it really that much better? Is it really better at all? I'm not entirely sure. I will say it's about an hour 32 minutes. That means after credits, it's less than an hour and a half. I'm okay with that. And I think that's probably a mercy killing of the movie. I'm like, oh my God, thank God. Because the fact that it's short is probably my favorite thing about it. But speaking, let's not talk about the running time. Let's talk about the movie. And let's get into the plot. Because as I talked about last week, Fantastic Four from 2005 barely had a plot. It was like, this is a Fantastic Four. Okay, now what? Well, we need a villain. Okay, well, where's the villain? Doom. Okay, well, then just fight Doom. And by the time they got to that, it was at the end of the movie. Like, there was nothing in between there. They gave him the origin. They had nothing to do. They just kind of milled around for a while. And then they fought Doom. This time, the plot is better because, well, there's a plot for one. That's how it's better. And we pick up where we ended off last time, which is that Reed and Sue are getting married. And wouldn't you know it, at their wedding, who shows up but the Silver Surfer? That guy. I hate when that happens. I hate when he just shows up to your wedding uninvited, Oh, is this anyone's +1? Oh, that goddamn Silver Surfer. He shows up uninvited. And, well, I mean, I'll be honest. The more egregious thing isn't that he showed up uninvited. It's that when he shows up somewhere, 8 days later, the planet is dead. Which is what Reed Richards discovers. And, of course, then they want to find out, like, what does he want? How do we stop him? We don't want the world to end because we're the good guys. That's how you know. Doom is a bad guy. He wants the world to end. Yes, Doom is back. Last week I wasn't sure if he was back because I had never seen this. He's in it. He's in it a lot. He probably shouldn't be in it at all, in my opinion. But you know what? Silver Surfer isn't the only one who tries to crash the wedding. I want to talk about one of my favourite moments in the film, and it probably isn't a good sign when I'm talking about this so early on in the film. The Stan Lee cameo, which is maybe my favourite Stan Lee cameo of all time. He tries to get into the wedding as himself with his own name, and they're like, nope, not happening. And I don't know why. I thought that was funny. Sandy's played himself, I think, in Captain Marvel, and I think that might be the only other time he's played himself. But here he's like actually name dropped. I just thought that was great. I got a laugh out of me. It's so obvious, it's so dumb, but it's pretty good. And yeah, that's probably not good that I'm talking about this early on. But I will say, it's also a nod to the comics, because Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, I think, try to crash the wedding in the comics, and they also don't get in. But if you hear that and you're like, hey, this must be pretty faithful to the comics. Nope. Like, Galactus, notoriously, in this film, is a cloud. And I was like, hey, come on, man. I'm sure it's not just a cloud. And now that I've seen it, yeah, it's a fucking cloud, isn't it? Like, you could have done something to make it more intimidating there. It's just like, oh no, a dark cloud. That's about as threatening as a rainy day, And I mean, I guess he's in space. So and look, okay, he's not just a cloud. There's particles in there, I guess, and some interesting colors. And it's a shame because Galactus, like the design of Galactus, is so awesome. It's such a curvy design. It's massive. It's really cool. And they're just like, no, cloud will do. Like, there's concept art of this that looks pretty good, but I guess Tim Story was like, nope. Let's talk about Tim Story, actually. Because, not the worst choice he's made. And I wanted to, actually, look, before I get to Tim Story, I will say this about the cast, okay? I think they're all better in this film. I think it's because they have more to work with, okay? Jessica Alba got a lot of shit for her performance in the first Fantastic Four film. And I was kind of saying, look, I think it's that she doesn't have a lot to work with. And this leads to a really awkward moment that apparently occurred on set between Tim Story and Jessica Alba, which, first of all, what did they do to Jessica Alba here? They made her look so fake. Like, imagine looking at Jessica Alba and being like, not good enough. We need to make her look different. As opposed to looking like Jessica Alba. Which also, in the first film, there was a line I didn't mention. Where they're talking to Doom, they're like, oh, Doom, you can have any woman you want. Why would you want Sue? Yeah, why would you want that troll Jessica Alba? Like, Jessica Alba, who at this time in the world was voted like the sexiest woman on the planet or something, which I think they actually reference in this film as well. But yeah, they changed her appearance. They gave her this really ugly blonde wig that just looks really strange. Now, apparently that was because she didn't want to bleach her hair because it damaged her hair the first time. But just give her regular hair. The weirder choice they do is they give her these big blue contacts. I don't know why. Some people said it's to be faithful to the comics. I mean, you weren't faithful to the comics in a lot of other regards. Why eye color? Why? No one's going to be like, hey, Sue has brown eyes or blue eyes. Like, who cares? It's just really strange. And I've, some people have said there's a possible racial thing here. I mean, they took, I believe Alba has of Mexican origin or Mexican heritage, I should say. They gave her blonde hair, blue eyes. Well, that's very Aryan, isn't it? But anyway, even more awkward is this run-in we had on set with Tim Story and Jessica Alba, where she went to him in earnest, seemingly, and said, "Look, a lot of people didn't like my performance. What do you think it is?" And she was getting ready to do a big emotional scene, and Tim Story said to her, "It looks too real. It looks too painful. Can you be prettier when you cry? Cry pretty, Jessica. Don't do that thing with your face. Just make it flat. We can CGI the tears in. Yikes. Cry pretty." What the fuck? Could you imagine saying that to any of your male actors? Like, oh, Michael Chiklis, cry pretty. Cry pretty, Chiklis. What the hell? It's just so horrible. And apparently this film nearly made her want to quit acting. I'm not surprised. That's a horrible thing to say to anyone, but especially to a woman, like, on set, like, cry pretty. Oh, you have to look pretty when you cry. You can't emote. And that makes me think more and more that if she gave a bad performance, like, probably not helped by bad direction. But anyway, one person who did do better at this film is The Thing, because visually, he didn't get stuck with a blonde wig or blue eyes. No, thank God. He got a slightly better suit, which you might not necessarily notice. I did, because one of the complaints I had in the last suit was that his head just looks like a big orange blob without any kind of real features. They gave him a kind of a stronger brow. They gave him broader shoulders. Apparently it's a new prosthetic, so he can get in and out of the suit easier. So that's good for Michael Chiklis. And the rest of the cast, Chris Evans is, again, pretty good as the Human Torch. They do some stuff here that's really on point with his characterization. One thing they do is, like, he's like a corporate sellout. They give him a jacket with all the logos on him. And at first I was like, yeah, that's so the Human Torch. And then I was like, oh, they really only did that so they could actually sell out. I was like, oh. Oh, Hollywood.
What do you have against capitalism?
They also do a thing where, like, he's like hitting on a girl for the whole movie. It's nice as well that he's like, he's not hitting on every woman ever. Now he's just going for one woman. So I was like, hey, that's character development, I guess. And at the end, when there's a big wedding, she tries to catch a bouquet, and he's like, nope. He's like, oh, sorry, I'm just like, that's the Human Torch right there. One person who doesn't really get a lot to do is The Thing. I mean, the one thing they do get him to do, I guess, he shouts at a bear at one point, which really made me just go, oh, I thought The Thing was going to fight a bear like Lou Ferrigno and the Hulk. Oh, man.
Yeah, that's right. Keep running, boo-boo.
But yeah, it was a funny scene, but aside from that, he gets very, very little to do. Alicia Masters is there again, but they don't really do much with her either. Reed, I would say Reed and Sue, I like their dynamic a lot more in this. I think they're a lot more believable. Well, as for what he does, I mean, they do a few shots with him and his superpowers, I guess. Like, he has a bachelor party and he's on the dance floor. Really weird scene. Like his body, his limbs are just flying all over the place. I'm like, that's not good dancing. That's just kind of weird. If I saw that like at a nightclub, I'd be like, okay, that's cool, like, your powers and all, but like, ugh, what the hell? And also, like, it also makes no sense. Like, do his clothes just stretch? I guess they must, because otherwise, in real life, I guess they all fix their clothes in this somehow. And also they give him another really weird power. Like, at one point he's texting and his fingers are all weirdly rubbery. He has like weird rubber thumbs. I'm like, stop that. That's disgusting. Yeah, very odd. Actually, one thing I want to say, right? They make it like clear at one point in some of the other films that, like, he can mold his face. I think it might be a plot point in the next Fantastic Four film as well, that he can mold his face to change it. He should do that a lot more. I don't know why he doesn't, but anyway. As for the rest of the powers, yeah, there's nothing too major or impressive as far as the powers compared to the last film. But they do have an interesting dynamic in that after coming in contact with the Silver Surfer, Johnny is able to swap people's powers. It's dumb. It's fun, though. It leads to some good moments. And they do actually put it into the plot quite a bit. So to be fair, there was some thought put into that overall. What else can I say? Oh, well, I want to say the kind of fallout of him dancing with all these women on the dance floor during his bachelor party is Sue Storm sees him. And I'm so glad. Gotta give the movie props here. I was so worried when I saw this. I was like, oh my god, we're going to have like the awkward, stupid romance angle where it's like, oh, you were dancing with other women. Do you not find me attractive? Oh, how dare you. Slap, the wedding's off. Oh, I was like, no. It brushes over that in like 2 minutes. It's like, yeah, it's cool, I get it. I did this off on my bachelor party. I'm like, oh, that's perfect. Well done, movie. Well done. I also want to give it a well done, a bit of a round of applause, a pat on the back for bringing us Andre Braugher, who plays General. Don't remember his name. I was going to try. I don't know. Raymond Holt.
Hot damn!
Velvet Thunder. No. But he's the General. He's kind of a foil to Reed. You know, I actually quite like him. There's one really good scene with Reed where they're kind of getting ready to do something, and he's like, "Oh, you know, you take orders from me because you were a loser in high school." Ha ha ha. And like, then Reed is like, "Oh, well, I was a loser in high school. Well, I'm not going to do anything you tell me. I'm in power now, buddy." Ha! I'm like, "Hey, Reed got some balls." Really, you just know like that was the screenwriter who was like a writer nerd in high school, and they were like, "Oh, you're just a loser," and he's like, "Oh, well, now I'm writing $1 million movies. Who's a loser now?" Ha ha ha. Doom is back, and Silver Surfer is in the film, of course. This is Rise of the Silver Surfer. I guess he is risen for what would have been a spin-off film that never happened. But yeah, so like Silver Surfer being here, he's giving off cosmic energy, as I mentioned. That's what leads to all their powers being able to swap. But also that cosmic energy wakes up Doom and Latveria, that he can get out, that he's like unfrozen. I don't know why. I mean, if it did that, I would assume that would have lots of effects on other things, but never mind. They don't know what to do with Doom in this film at all. From a plot point to a design perspective to what. So like, when we saw the last film, right, I said it was really strange they made a big deal of his skin turning metal and his face turning metal and then just threw a mask on him anyway. Like, I assumed they were going to turn his face into kind of like a jagged metal thing that made him look like the Doctor Doom from the comics. But they just put a mask on him. Here, straight away once he wakes up, he cuts off the mask. So I'm like, oh, are we going to get it? He's going to be, you know, all deformed. He's going to have a metal face. A metal face. No, he's not. Well, he is, but they're not going to show you that. Apparently, Fox saw the makeup and was like, this looks terrible. And because of that, they gave him like a cowl and covered him up. And it's weird. Like, the makeup looked bad, so why did you take the mask off him at all? And then Silver Surfer uses powers on him, so he no longer looks metal. He just looks like Julie McMahon. Okay, why? And then by the end of the film, he puts the mask on again anyway, which is just, they don't know what to do with Doom in here. He doesn't need to be here. Not every Fantastic Four film needs Doctor Doom. And if you'd taken him out, you probably would have had time to focus on like Silver Surfer and maybe even a proper Galactus instead of making him a cloud. But anyway, so the Silver Surfer is around. We have a pretty decent scene after the wedding, actually, where Johnny Storm chases him. Pretty cool scene. They've made the Silver Surfer out to be a bit of a badass. And again, you can't fault them there. Silver Surfer is pretty cool overall. There's some lame stuff that I'll get to about him in a sec. But the motion capture performance, you know, played by Doug Jones, who of course was the pale man in Pan's Labyrinth. And the voice is Lawrence Fishburne, who, you know, good voice work. Again, he's good at giving that kind of ominous, epic delivery like he did in the Matrix films. Now, what is weird is that, and this might point to the film being rushed, which is something that I think kind of is evidenced here by the fact that it came out like 2 years later. They apparently didn't know, like, well into production, whether Silver Surfer was going to talk or not. That's probably something you should have figured out pretty early on. Like, I guess they just had to write his dialogue on the fly. In fact, if you look at the first trailer, Lawrence Fishburne obviously wasn't cast, so they had Doug Jones' voice there, because apparently at one point he was going to voice it all together.
All that you know is at an end.
All that you know is at an end.
Again, I think the voice work in it is fine. I think the motion capture performance is fine. And overall, I think Silver Surfer is fine. It's just a really weird choice that they were like, I don't know if he's going to talk. I guess that's why, by the way, later on in the film, he's got like a stomach that doubles as an expository visual representation of Galactus. And a really bad one as well, because like, it's just one picture of a planet. I'm like, that's an unnecessary visual aid. you couldn't have anything more exciting on your stomach? And then I'm like, what is that for? What, like, before you make Galactus, what could you do with that? Can you mold your body into anything? Is that a thing your whole race can do? I don't know. So yeah, actually, speaking of his race, he serves Galactus, you know, to save his planet and save the one he loves. So that's fine. I do think the effects on Silver Surfer look pretty good, and there's some cool things where he kind of sinks through his board and all that kind of thing, which are very good. Now the thing is, the actual board itself is the source of his power, and also what draws Galactus to the planet to devour. So I'm like, that's sort of lame and unnecessary. It kind of makes Silver Surfer useless without his board, but it does factor into the ending, which is Doctor Doom getting on the board and getting the cosmic energy powers, the power cosmic, I guess, comic wise. But again, it's kind of pointless. But anyway, we have the scene where their powers actually do swap, and again, this is where it feels like sort of disconnected from the regular rest of the film. I think that was a big deal in the trailers where it was like, oh my god, the Human Torch is the thing, and the thing is a Human Torch. What is going on? So basically, Johnny touches Sue. They tap off each other. He goes invisible. She goes on fire. And of course, we get the patented creepy shots of Jessica Alba. And if you thought it was bad last time with her in her underwear, this time she's totally naked, surrounded by the crowd. Someone's got a weird fetish, man. And then even Jessica Alba's character is like, why does this keep happening to me? Creepy executives, unfortunately. It's just really weird. Like, she went from being in her underwear to being naked. I'm like, if they made a third film, it would have to be R-rated with the trajectory this is going. It also leads to kind of a cruel moment. The director was concerned this would be cruel, and yeah, it kind of is. Like, the Thing, who of course, his big arc in most of the comics is that he's like, oh, I wish I could just be myself again and not be this. He touches off Johnny and becomes Michael Chiklis. He's Ben Grimm again for all of 2 seconds, and then he's back to the Thing. I'm like, oh. You could have just been like, hey, you know, I'm in trouble anyway. I'll just leave him be himself for a while. That would have been nice, but no. You could have gone back to Debbie, that horrible woman. Yeah, it's strange. So obviously they're concerned that they're swapping powers, and they've noticed that in London is where there's another dose of this energy where the Silver Surfer is likely going to show up, and they saved the London Eye. Thank God. It's very strange. Like, I didn't think this was a very good scene because I don't like. Oh no, I know there's people on the London Eye, but like, who cares? It's like they could have done more here as opposed to like having a big action scene instead of it just being like, oh, they're saving a landmark. Thank God. And the big kind of thing here is that Johnny kind of starts becoming a liability because of this, and they tried to like save the London Eye. Johnny taps off Reed by accident, and because of that, of course, he becomes stretchy, leading to it. He never really does anything with Reed's powers, but he just looks terrifying. He becomes like a weird flabby pool on the ground, which is like, ugh.
Oh my god! What's wrong with your face?
But Reed, of course, becomes a Human Torch, which is cool. One cool moment that I liked here, and again, it shows Reed's intelligence, and that why he should be the leader of the Fantastic Four, is that he kind of realized what to do, and straight away he welded the wheel using the heat. I'm like, that's pretty cool. Well done. And in doing this, they come back to the military base. They're like, oh, we don't know anything. We're running out of time, General. And at this moment, who walks in with a shit-eating grin on his face? It's Julian McMahon. It's Victor Von Doom. Sorry, it's just he just looks like Julian McMahon now. Which of course they're like, what? Do you know who this is? Well, and he's like, I've invited him here. He's had contact with the Silver Surfer, which he did. He tracked him down. That's what led to him, as I mentioned, becoming regular again. And so because of that, he's part of the team. I wonder if he's going to be a villain again. What do you think? So that's kind of where they join forces. I thought they'd do more with that. They don't really. But they do come up with a plan to separate the Silver Surfer from his board, because, of course, then they can, have him be depowered. And later on, of course, they're like, if we get rid of the board, Galactus won't come here. So they're in the forest. Wouldn't you know? Of course, it's a Fox superhero film because it's in a forest. I looked up IMDb trivia and I was like, this is the same forest from the first 3 X-Men films. I'm like, yeah, no shit. For some reason, this era of Fox superhero films, they were like, put him in the forest. Someone must have been like, this is a great cost-saving measure. I don't know what, but it's really strange. It was really obvious. First thing that clicked in my head. There's not really like a cool action scene here or anything. I did like the moment. There's a moment where Silver Surfer like swallows a missile with his board. But aside from that, it's just not very interesting. They do make Doom out to be such a sniveling bitch as well, which I'm like, oh, come on, man. That's Dr. Doom. He should be a real badass. But anyway, they managed to get the board and the Silver Surfer separated, and they go back to military-based Fantastic Four, kind of confined to a chamber, I guess, for whatever reason. Who cares? And this is the moment where we get the storytelling stomach, and then Doom, wouldn't you know it turns out he's still a bad guy. I'm shocked. And do you know who else is shocked? Everyone in the room when he uses his Dr. Doom powers, and then he jumps on the board and puts back on his mask for some reason. And then the only different visually is that he's like wearing a lot more black clothes, and I guess he's slightly more silvery because he's the Silver Surfer now. He's got the power cosmic, and he kills Andre Brower in a weirdly graphic way. I think I'm not even sure how to describe what he does here. He like shoots him, and it's like I don't like he doesn't he doesn't tear him apart. It's just like it looks almost like he was made out of Lego bricks and he just smashed half the Lego bricks in half. It just looked really strange. I was like, huh. But I do think, yeah, this leads to actually a very cool scene with the Fantastic Four, with the Fantastic Car and the Silver Surfer, who of course is now depowered without his board, chase after Doom around China, damaging the wall, by the way. Well done. Now the Mongols are going to get in, you fools. There's like a chase scene that he's using all his powers. It's cool seeing Doom use all his different powers as a surfer. It's a good scene. It's one of the better action scenes in the movie. But of course, this is leading us into our finale in Shanghai. Everyone against Doctor Doom. Dr. Doom throws a spear intended for the Silver Surfer. Sue Storm jumps in the way and gets a spear through the heart, seemingly dead. Dun dun dun. Oh, and she'll survive. Don't worry. Well, you know they didn't have to. They could have killed her off. There was never going to be another Fantastic Four film. So this is where the power swapping dynamic kind of pays off. Johnny taps off every member of the Fantastic Four, and now he has every power. He's kind of like a Super Skrull. I don't know if that was what they were going for, but either way, he is now able to fight Doom kind of super powered up, which is cool. It leads to a decent enough finale, better than the last finale certainly. It's very comic booky. I will give it in that defense, or in its defense. But yeah, it really makes the rest of the Fantastic Four totally pointless, doesn't it? So, although I will say, it doesn't make them all pointless, because while he's fighting Doom, Michael Chiklis, Ben Grimm hops on a crane and slams into Doom and knocks him off the board, sending him careening into the ocean, and he's never seen again. So I guess if there was another Fantastic Four film, he would have crawled out of the ocean or something. The crane shot just looked so stupid, but it was kind of cheesy. I kind of loved it for how bad it was. And then you're like, well, we've saved the day, except Galactus is going to eat all of us. And they're like, we're too late. And then Silver Surfer has his board back, so he saves Sue Storm. I'm like, okay, well, that was easy. And then he goes up to Galactus. He flies up the cloud, and then he's like, we're done, you and me, professionally. He does a Christian Bale. We're done, you and me, professionally.
What the fuck are you doing? No! No! Da-da-da-da like this in the background. What the fuck is it with you? Fucking ass.
What's really stupid with this is he kind of explodes in energy, killing Galactus. He could have done this at any time, really. He doesn't really sacrifice himself, because we see in a mid-credit scene that he did survive, because of course they wanted to make a Silver Surfer spin-off film. Not an easy sentence to say. But yeah, not a very exciting ending to your movie. But I did think it was a decent finale. But I suppose the real ending is that they're in Japan, Sue and the rest of the Fantastic Four. And also, Kerry Washington is there again now. And they actually get married in Japan. There's probably some cultural appropriation going on here. But it was 2007. It was a simpler time where you could put Jessica Alba in a kimono. But I mean, look, they did a lot of stuff to Jessica Alba visually, so a kimono is probably not the worst thing, to be honest. And then we have that moment, as I said, where Johnny Storm burns the bouquet, and they hop in the Fantastic car, and they start off on their next mission, and they put the number 4 in the sky, like that classic moment from the 2 years before, where they put the Fantastic Four logo in the sky. And that is the rise of the Silver Surfer. Well, it's a better film, certainly. Is it a good film? No, not really. I actually will say, and this is probably the most damning thing I can say about the film. And it's not something I intended. It's not something actively about the film. I watched this a couple of days ago, maybe like less than a week ago. And when I sat down to record this, I could not really remember the film. And I have a good memory, but I had to watch through clips of this film again to jog my memory. And that is a pretty big indictment on the film. Like I said, the story, of course, is better in that there's more of a story. The characters, I like the Reed-Sue dynamic. I think that generally their characterization of a lot of these characters is good. I actually want to talk, one of my favourite scenes in the whole, actually, 2 of my favourite scenes in the film involve Johnny Storm. And they're not like a big action moment. I like how they kind of explore the Thing, Human Torch dynamic in a scene. And they actually, they're kind of friends better than they were, at least. So that's nice. But my favourite scene maybe in the whole film is before the wedding. There's a scene with Sue Storm and Johnny Storm just chatting. And it's in that moment where I was like, oh yeah, they are meant to be siblings. And this is the only moment in the whole film series where they feel like it. And it's just a very nice scene. And I was like, man, if they had more stuff like this film could have worked. As I said, Thing has probably suffers the most because he has pretty much nothing to do. He had a lot in the last film, but not a lot to do here. The Silver Surfer, visually I love it. I think power-wise they make him pretty cool. And again, it's pretty faithful to the comics in some ways, but making the board be a source of power is kind of a dumb move because it makes him just really boring coming into the finale. I don't think his ending is all that interesting either. But I mean, visually he's decent. I would have, like, I'll put it this way. I like the motion capture, I like the voice acting. I would have watched the Silver Surfer spin-off film with some interest. But, you know, it was never to be anyway. Doctor Doom is a character that didn't belong in this film at all, in my opinion. He's just pointless. They clearly didn't know what to do with him. That goes from a story perspective, from a visual perspective, and the fact that he takes his mask off to cover his face, to go back to normal, to put a mask on again. Oh, it's just stupid, in my opinion. I don't get it. Again, they put him on the Fantastic Four team briefly, just so we can double cross them. Really, obviously, it's just pointless. They don't really do much with him in this film. There was no need for him to be here, except they kind of just needed another threat to kind of, you know, work against on the same side as Silver Surfer, which, you know, if you'd done Galactus right, could have been Galactus. So that's it. Again, it's a breezy enough watch. It's less than an hour and a half, and there's some things I like about it, but it's just not a very good film. The big question, though, is it the best Fantastic Four film? Well, I'll be able to answer that definitively next week when I sit down and watch a film that I actually have seen before and is considered by many to be the worst Fantastic Four film and one of the worst superhero films. There's going to be a lot to talk about with this one. Welcome to the ReWatcher. I'm your cult leader, Tom Bott, and I just watched Fantastic Four 2015, the notorious Fantastic Four 2015, which is affectionately or dismissively known as Fan-Four-Stick. It's a film seemingly nobody likes, but you know what you should like? This video, because man, this is an ordeal. And we're finally through all the Fantastic Four films, and why not subscribe? Because next week, hopefully, I'll be going through an breezier watch with Loki as it starts on Disney+. But let's get into this film. So before I started making videos, there was a few things where I was like, I don't think I ever need to talk about this film or this series. It feels like it's been done to death. And this was one of those films. And yet, here we are. I think, like, because there's only so much you can say about this film. Everyone knows it's, you know, bites the big one. Everyone knows it was a bomb. Everyone knows about the trouble behind the scenes. And because of that, I was like, how do I approach this film? I'm going to just try to give my honest thoughts on it first. And then I might try going into some of the drama. And then I'll go in, I guess, to the film itself. So, Fantastic Four, I should say. Because, yeah, right, let's talk about that. Chronicle is the first film from Josh Trank, writer, director, co-writer Fantastic Four. Max Landis wrote Chronicle. And he made this when he was very young. I believe he was the youngest director to have a #1 film at one point. I'm not sure if that's true. I might need to double check that. But for $12 million, he made a found-footage superhero film called Chronicle that made 10 times its budget. Now, Chronicle, I think, was a massive success in America. It was kind of mixed success everywhere else. I was actually a big fan of Chronicle. I kind of pushed it on a lot of people when it first came out because I thought it was really, really good. And based on the strength of that, he got this. Because isn't that the way director makes small film? And of course the studios are like, make this massive film. You don't have to make it. We'll make it, but put your name on it. Which is kind of the way it is now. And from there, they gave him the keys to the Fantastic Four. And I'm going to talk a bit about the troubles behind the scenes, okay? Because I don't think you can talk about this film without it at this point. It's kind of like the same way if you talk about Justice League, you have to talk about what happened. Here, I don't think you can discuss this film removed from any of the troubles behind the scenes. So, I want to say this as well. I'm going to talk, of course, about his notorious tweet that he put out. Josh Trank put out a tweet the night before the film came out. And he said, a year ago I had a fantastic version of this and it would have received great reviews. You'll probably never see it. That's the reality though. That apparently cost the film $10 million. That's what some people said. But here's the thing. Was there ever going to be a great version of this film? Was this ever going to be Josh Trank's vision? And that's sort of the strange question about this. And you can put a lot of blame on a lot of people for this movie. Josh Trank, you can put blame on. Fox, you can put blame on. You can kind of... It's strange because normally in this situation, you'd say, oh, I side with the director, or else the director's being a diva. Here I'm like, I think they're both not good. At least that's the way it appears. So a lot of the stories, I mean, this is a sort of a bridge version, I guess, of the troubles behind the scenes. But I could go into this for way longer, and I probably will someday. I'll probably do a video on it at some point. But this film, okay, was only made because Fox were going to lose the rights to Fantastic Four. Okay, they had 7 years to put a film in production, and 1 year after to release it, which means if you do the math, the last film came out in 2007. So the latest this film came out was 2015, which is when it came out. Which is why they couldn't delay it, couldn't really move it around. They were under the gun here to get this film made. And because of that, they hired Josh Trank, and they hired writer Jeremy Slater. And immediately, they seem to clash. And this is, again, probably evidence of what this film always was meant to be under Josh Trank, okay? He wanted not a superhero film. He did not want a superhero-y film. I mean, even when you watch Chronicle, obviously there's superhero elements in it, but it sort of only has that as kind of the edges of the story. Jeremy Slater, I remember now, this was 2012 when they got hired. Avengers had just come out, and that was the template he used. He wanted this to be super heroic. He wanted this to be a big, light-hearted superhero film. Apparently his version included Mole Man, Galactus, as the Latvian dictator, and a lot of other stuff. This is not what Josh Trank wanted. He was not hired to write the script, though. And apparently there was notes going between Fox and Josh Trank that should have been shared with Jeremy Slater that never were. After 6 months, Slater walks away. And the script is immediately a mess because Josh Trank is putting in his stuff. Now, I will say this. Apparently, the broad strokes of the story and the structure, and from what I've read, this seems to be true. The structure of Slater's script seems to be pretty much what the final film is. But he says the rest of it is not his film. Now, he does get a credit, so I'm assuming some parts of it are. But anyway, Josh Trank starts putting in his input. Again, he was never hired to write the script. He was hired as a director. Then they bring on Simon Kinberg. Now, again, allegedly, Simon Kinberg, and again, this is what the rumor is, and it has been for a while. Simon Kinberg is basically a writer and a producer, and has been on all the Fox superhero films pretty much since X-Men Last Stand, I think. He wrote Dark Phoenix, he directed Dark Phoenix. But if you believe like the scuttlebutt and the rumor, he is essentially like a studio yes man. He just says like, what does the studio want? I'll make that. And he gets paid quite well for it. But he came in and started writing it as well. And the film, even before it goes in front of the cameras, there's controversy with it. Because they cast Michael B. Jordan as the Human Torch. Which is, I think, excellent casting. On paper, in a better film, he'd probably do really well. But of course, black Human Torch makes a lot of people mad. The internet, of course, is normally a beacon of hope and positivity, and not racism. Stan Lee supports this idea. Of course, eventually the studio supports this idea as well. They're okay with it. It seems like everyone is on board with Michael B. Jordan. It's the rest of the casting stuff that right away causes issues. Josh Trank says he wanted a black actress, as Sue Storm, and studios I know we want Kate Mara. And because of that, first of all, they have to go up the story that, you know, Kate Mara is adopted by Dr. Storm, Reggie Cathy's character, and such, for it to sort of make sense. But because of that, we have a lot of tension straight away between Kate Mara and Josh Trank. He's apparently very cruel to her, very cold to her at the very least. And I think it was maybe a year after this film. It mightn't have even been a year. It was probably less than a year. Where she said basically that the experience was horrible. And that she put it down to sort of the directing style. She says, I think that speaking up is something I think we all should probably learn. I don't regret doing it at all, but do regret not having stood up for myself. I regret that for sure. Josh Trank did want Miles Teller. But it seems like, and look, I think I was maybe after this time an article came out about Miles Teller coming off like the biggest dick ever. And yeah, it seems like he was in full egotistical mode when he was on set. The rumors, and again, all this is alleged. We only hear, like, all of this is under NDAs and rumors from both sides trying to throw off the narrative. But he was for pure, like, I'm a movie star, I don't do this, blah, blah, blah. It's beneath me, and to the point that him and Josh Trank apparently got pretty heated on set, nearly got into a fist fight. And again, all this was downplayed in the press until it was exploded open by Josh Trank and his tweets that kind of opened the floodgates, as it were. So straight away, we have a script that's all over the place that people can't agree on. We have actors, some of who want to be there, some who do not want to be there, and it seems like just straight away it gets a bit crazy. The other thing we should mention, as I said, is that Trank is clearly over his head. Okay, as he admits himself later on, which we will get to, but he's not fully prepared for a big studio film. I mean, again, going from a 12 million film to this, which I think had 133 million at one point, and then it went up to 155 possibly. He's very reclusive on set. He's isolated, which leads to tensions between him and Fox. Now, again, both sides have different arguments here. Some people say that Trank is the one causing the trouble. Other people are saying that Fox is putting pressure on Trank, and because of that, he's just totally withdrawn. But he's to the point that at one point, when filming, the monitors are in a tent that only he is looking at. He barely talks to anyone, and when they're setting up, he's just in his trailer alone. It's crazy. It doesn't sound like a good working environment to be in. At the same time, Lucasfilm is like, hey, want to make Boba Fett film? And he's like, absolutely. So there's more pressure on him for that. Eventually, the rumors and this disaster means that he's fired. As much as they try to put a nice spin on it, he's fired by Lucasfilm, and his Boba Fett film never ends up happening. And yeah, again, is this all his fault? Possibly. I don't want to either vindicate him, and I don't want to like liberate him either, because Fox were very unreasonable as well. It seems like he thought he was making a 2-hour 20-minute film, then they were like 1 hour 40 minutes. So that's not great. He was, as I said, very withdrawn on set, and seemingly at times when Fox even tried to help him, he rejected them. So again, it's like this is just bad communication, and it manifests itself in him being a very, very destructive personality on set, both in his relationships with the cast and outside of it. Apparently, like, he caused $100,000 worth of damage to the house he was living in, him and his 3 dogs. Yeah, that's not good. That's sort of some of the reports coming out. And again, people are saying this might be because of the studio interfering so much, and they are, because when the first cut of the film comes back, they're surprised at how morose the film is. They say it's not for the fans, and they kind of felt like this was more a sequel to Chronicle than a Fantastic Four film. And yeah, that's kind of how it feels at times. Like, this was meant to be a kind of an origin story beginning for the Fantastic Four. I think that was one of the early titles, was like Fantastic Four Begins or Fantastic Four Origins, something terrible, generic, but that was what it was meant to be. And at times it does kind of feel like, the angsty teenagers trying to figure out superpowers, pretty much Chronicle again. And because of this, they need to do a lot of reshoots, a lot of rewrites. They need to happen very, very fast. And that causes a lot of problems for a number of reasons. First of all, Josh Trank is... they had to really rush this film out. Okay, they had to get it done. Okay, if they didn't get it done, they were going to lose the rights to Fantastic Four, a potential billion-dollar franchise. Okay? The thing is that they're not confident in Trank's vision anymore. And they start doing their own rewrites, their own plans for reshoots. They bring a lot of uncredited writers. They don't necessarily all go through Trank. At this point, it seems like he's basically coming up with his version of the script, and they're being ignored, and they're saying this is the version we want to do. And it ends up to the point where they can't really decide what to do with this film. And he says, like, he seemingly checks out. He's on set, but a lot of the duties and the setup and the shots and the blocking is all being done by Simon Kinberg, and I think one of the other producers, I think, is called Hutch Parnell. And the problem with that is that violates DGA rules, Directors Guild of America. And Trank says this, and they're like, okay, here's a deal we'll make with you. You make your cut, we'll make our cut. Whichever tests better, that's the one we'll do. They're like, okay. It becomes very clear they had no intention of ever doing Josh Trank's cut, because they were putting millions into reshoots and rewrites for the editor's version, which is Stephen Rifkin, who edited this film, and if you ask, Trank is basically the de facto director of this cut. The constant issue with this film, not just obviously the rest of them. Look, the whole film is a mess. But as when we get to my review, there's a point where the whole film changes, coming into the last act. They could never get the ending right in this film. There was an ending at one point that they just weren't happy with. It was apparently, a lot of it was rewritten on the fly. They brought in Simon Kinberg and another writer to try to fix the ending. It still didn't work. They brought in Drew Goddard, apparently, uncredited, to try to fix the ending, and it still didn't work. The ending of the film was constantly rewritten and never was really something that worked. Even in the finished film, it doesn't work. It got a lot of criticism when the actual movie was released as well, and rightly so. By the time they're trying to put this ending together as well, they're under really serious time constraints. The cast isn't really available at times, so they have to use doubles. They can get Miles Teller, so they just put him in front of a green screen and they have a lot of focus on him as a result. It's a mess, okay? It becomes very clear that they don't know what to do. They don't have a clear vision. They don't know what they want the Fantastic Four to be. They know they want it to be a big successful movie and spawn a franchise because they already have plans for a sequel. But they don't know what this film is. They haven't figured it out. It's a weird mishmash of a dark, serious, gritty Fantastic Four, something along with the ultimate Fantastic Four from the comics, and also a superhero film, even though they kind of spent ages showing how horrible these powers kind of are. They wanted to be something more classical and consistent with the Marvel Universe, and that doesn't work, as those just are not things that are compatible. And it ends up being a total mess when it's finally released, unsurprisingly. They also apparently weren't happy with the level of humour in it. The first trailer comes out and people are saying, hey, it doesn't look very light or funny. And they apparently did comedy rewrites and shooting as well. So that is what it is. As I mentioned, the day before it comes out, Josh Trank puts out a tweet. Before this, he'd really kind of downplayed how bad it was. He was like, oh, it's not a big deal, you know, this is my film. And he went to Comic-Con, I think, promoting and all that stuff. In fact, apparently even like days before the film came out, he said it was better than 99% of comic movies ever made. Now, I don't know if he was being falsely sincere or if he genuinely believed that until the reviews came out. He apparently inspired one cast member to write back saying, I don't think so. Which, yeah, that cast member was right, whoever it was. The reviews come out. He tweets that out. He is expected to be basically in Hollywood jail forever. And he kind of was until he made a Capone recently, which wasn't very good, apparently, which we'll get to as well. Either way, the cut of the film is massively butchered. And I don't know, is it all studio interference? There's no real major action in the film until that really terrible ending. And it seems like there was scenes planned, but Fox constantly slashed the budget and demanded rewrites and script changes and all this stuff. There's a big action scene that's in the trailer with the thing jumping out of a helicopter, not in the film. And some people have said it's because Fox slashed the budget. Apparently, as many as 3 action scenes were gotten rid of in this movie. Other people said that it was because Josh Trank just wasn't sure what he was doing and wasn't sure if he wanted it in the film, and eventually decided it didn't work, so he took it out. But either way, the film is a mess because of all that backstage drama. I mean, half this video is dedicated to this backstage drama, so I'm going to have to put a time code if you want to just hear me talk about the film, I guess, which I'm going to talk about now, so it's a bit late to say there's a time code now. But anyway, look, there's some things the film does well. There's some things the film does terribly. It's not a good film. Okay, let me say that. And that's not blowing anyone's mind, like Doctor Doom does later on, blowing up people's heads. It's at least a film I can just sort of have a strange admiration for. Look, what I hate most is a film that is just, uninspired, doesn't try anything. Okay? This film is a big swing. Now, I think it's mostly it's a miss, as much as it's a big swing. But there's some interesting ideas here. It's a baffling decision that they made to do a Cronenberg body horror film with the Fantastic Four, the cheesiest of the Marvel heroes. I kind of have to admire the balls, but also I don't think it was that they were being ballsy. I think it was just that they had no idea what to do. And then when they did get it, they were like, this is weird, we don't want it, what? So yeah, I blame Fox in that regard. But also, I don't think Josh Trank's vision was fully realised either, as far as what he wanted to do. But let's get into it. This is started in such a strange way We start young. We start with Fantastic Four as kids. Ben Grimm and Reed Richards are in the same class. And Dan Castellaneta is there as Homer Simpson, the teacher. He's a total dick. Like, the kid is like, hey, I'm going to make a teleporter. And, straight away he's like, you can't do that, you moron. You're a fool, Reed. What are you doing? Sit down. What are you going to make a flying car? Ooh. Yeah, that's a comic reference for the Fantastic Car. And if you were hoping that, that might pay off in some way, like him getting the car and being like, hey, I told you I could do the flying car, teacher, you idiot. I'm out to another dimension. No, it doesn't pay off. The Fantastic Car was actually cut from this film. This is how we kind of meet Ben Grimm and Reed Richards. Reed is making this portal to another dimension. Now, I hear you saying, oh, the negative zone. No, it's called Planet Zero, because I guess they figured the negative zone was too silly a name, but Planet Zero, that generic ass shit was good. Yeah, why is it not the negative zone? I have no idea. Either way, he's making a portal to a different dimension. And, like, what's really strange is that the way they get Ben Grimm and Reed Richards to me is like Grimm's family owns a scrapyard and Reed breaks into steel batteries, and that's how they become friends, by working on this dimension hopping machine. And now if you're like, oh, hey, some parts of this are kind of comic book, I recognize them. Well, you might recognize it's clobbering time. And it's about to be ruined by you forever, because in this film, it's clobbering time is, well, it comes from Ben Grimm's older brother, who beats him up. He says it's clobbering time. Wow, that's dark. And pointless, and just feels like it's trying to be edgy. Oh man, that's kind of a downer. But anyway, I guess they were sort of faithful to the comics. If you're thinking, where's the levity in this film? Tim Heidecker's in it. For some reason, for 2 minutes as Ben Grimm's dad. Or Reed's dad. For no real reason. And that's it for him. I have no idea why he's in this film. I don't know what his connection is. But either way, he's here for no reason. And no source of comedy from Tim and Eric. But either way, the rest of the film, you're like, hey, well, if it's not comedic, maybe it could be cinematic. Nope. First of all, I'm going to talk about this a couple of times, I'm sure. Visually, the effects are fine. But the colour palette of this movie is so dull. It's just so washed out and boring. Everything, like the Baxter Building, which they get into, just silver and metallic colours, cold colours. Everything is just washed out and boring. It's just it's like they want to make it really grounded and gritty, but it's so boring looking that it feels like a manufactured effect. But as another thing they could have done cinematically here is they finally get access to a dimension, and you're like, oh, what's something cool or interesting that could come from another space dimension? Rock. A rock comes through. Wow, very cinematic and entertaining. Whoa. Did you see the new Fantastic Four film? The Fantastic Four got a rock from another dimension. Wow. Oh, man. So, yeah. Then we get a time jump. One of two in this film. We jump forward 7 years. And this is something also I want to mention. I have no idea what age these characters are meant to be. Like, genuinely no idea. Because we start with him as a kid. We jump forward 7 years. I thought he was quite young as a kid. Now he's seemingly in the same school. Because Dan Castellaneta is still his teacher, because he's at a science fair now 7 years later. But there's also kids that are way younger than him, and also now it's played by Miles Teller, Reed Richards is, and Jamie Bell is playing Ben Grimm. They're grown up, and they look just weird hanging around in a school. Like, there's kids that are way younger than him here. I don't know what age they're meant to be, but it doesn't look believable, whatever's going on. But either way, we get Miles Teller's punchable face. And in the science fair, he gets his dimension machine to work, and Dan Castellaneta is like, that's not science, it's magic, you fool! And he's like, you're disqualified. But someone who's a bit more impressed is Dr. Storm, played by Reggie Cathy, and his daughter, who's in tow, Sue Storm, played by Kate Mara. And they're like, oh, well done, Reed. Hey, you should come to the Baxter Foundation. That's where we take young scientists and turn them into tools for the government, seemingly. It seems kind of shady, to be honest. And he's like, oh, awesome. Hey, Ben Grimm, I don't need you anymore. Bye. He goes to the Baxter Building, which they treat as a big deal. But like in the reality of the movie, it's just a building that says Baxter, so I don't know why they're impressed. But it's, I guess, a big deal for the comic readers, kind of. But yeah, that's how we get into the Baxter Building. That's how Sue Storm and Reed Richards meet. And if you're hoping this to be cool or have good chemistry, no, they have the chemistry of newspaper and a bucket of water. Really, it's like they just don't interact very well at all. They seemingly are very uncomfortable around each other. I had heard that Josh Trank apparently micromanages so many of the performers to be like, do this, say it like this, and have this mannerism, to the point that it just sapped all energy out of them, and it was really flat performance. I'm not going to look. I will say every actor I've seen in this film has done better performance. Like, but they have no chemistry. There's one part where there's like a joke. I think it's meant to be a joke because they laugh and it's awkward. Maybe it's meant to be awkward flirting, but it's terrible.
Where were you born?
Kosovo.
Kosovo. You don't have an accent.
I don't.
I don't know what. Yeah, it's not funny. Anyway, this film is just awkward, angsty teenagers for half of it. I don't know if they're teenagers, but they're certainly awkward and they're certainly angsty, and I'm not sure if it's a deliberate thing to make them awkward. But anyway, I mean, they're cool hipster people, and they remind you of that because she's listening to Portishead. Whoa, you're so hip, Sue Storm. Anyway, do you know who's also in the film? Because we need something comic booky. Victor Von Doom, or Victor Domashev, as he was supposed to be called. But then they were like, oh god, no, we need something comic booky, and they're making Doctor Doom very clearly. Because anytime they say Doctor Doom, it's like awkwardly off like scene. They're like, oh, it's Victor Doom. You know, it's Doctor Doom, Victor Von Doom. Like, they change his name apparently, so sometimes it's ADR, it seems like. Other times it's characters off screen calling him that. Which is really weird. Because apparently he was going to be called Victor Domashev. He was going to be a blogger who blogs under the name Doom. Which is terrible. Which makes, you know, when you hear something like that, you're like, Trank's version would not have probably been that much better. And yeah, he's not, you know, a dictator of Latveria. He is a computer programmer who's socially awkward. He left, or was fired from the, oh no, I think he left the Baxter Foundation, but he was working on the same thing Reed was working on. He left before it was finished. So now he comes back and he's like, oh, you know, oh, he's working on the same thing I am. You should come back and see, because this guy's got it to work. But he also has a hot for Sue. I should say that. He's like, is Sue going to be there? So he ends up there as well. I don't know why they keep doing love triangles between Victor Von Doom and Sue Storm and Reed Richards, and they never really use it aside from just setting it up. And that's kind of the case here as well. Yeah, can I talk about how Doctor Doom gets his name? In the most ham-fisted, awkward way. They do a lot of ham-fisting things here, especially towards the end. But this literally makes no sense. Okay, so there's a scene and he's being a downer, and Sue Storm says,
Dr. Doom over here.
That doesn't make any sense. Because, like, that's not a thing. That's not a thing people say. No one's like, oh, this Dr. Doom over here. You only say that if you're deliberately referencing the comics and the character, which isn't a thing in this universe. So then I was trying to, like, I was literally, like, my head was in knots trying to figure this out. I'm like, okay, well, is he a doctor? In which case, you're like, oh, Dr. Doom over here. But then the what she's saying doesn't make sense. And then it's like, well, okay, but what does Doctor Doom mean? Does it mean something else in this universe? I mean, she doesn't have to call him Doctor Doom if he's a doctor, because then it's just redundant. What is going on? They just really had to be like, hey, it's Doctor Doom, you dummies. See, he is in this film, even though it's nothing like the character. And that's not the only thing they do. They do some really obvious ham-fisted ways to remind you that Johnny Storm is in fact the Human Torch, because Michael B. Jordan is introduced. He's a streetcar racer. And yeah, just to be like, hey, you know, he's the fire guy because his car blows up and catches fire. Get it? Because, like, it's like poetry, so it rhymes.
It's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
They also do really awkward things later on to be like, hey, he's the fire guy, right? Like, they immediately give me a welding torch, and they put flames on his mask for his welding. I don't know why they do it, but yeah, he crashes his car and, like, damages his arm. So his dad, Dr. Storm, is like, you can come to the Baxter building and pay off your debt and blah. So there we go. He's forced into this, isn't he? And, you know, their experiments are going pretty well. It's working, man. It's working. And because of that, they're like, hey, we like what you're doing here. We're going to send the army into this dimension. I'm like, oh, all right. That seems like a kind of crappy. And they don't want it. Now, I should mention two of the other characters in this film. I mentioned Reggie Cathy as Dr. Storm. You know, I think he's actually one of the better performances in the film. He's a totally unnecessary character. I feel like they just put him in because they were like, if these kids are meant to be young, like, they're too young to be running around making their own decisions. We need a grown-up. And Reggie Cathy looks old enough to be a grown-up. So he's there, I guess. We have Tim Blake Nelson, whose inclusion is very odd. I feel so bad for Tim Blake Nelson. Like, he was going to be the leader in a sequel to The Incredible Hulk, which never happened. He was, you know, in this film going to be the Mole Man. He was originally named, Harvey Allen. No, he was named Harvey Elder in the Mole Man is called Harvey Elder in the comics. And they changed that to Harvey Allen because I think at some point they were like, this is nothing like the Mole Man. We can't, what if we waste the Mole Man in this film? Just make him kind of like the Mole Man. So it's terrible. They kill him off anyway. Poor Tim Blake Nelson, he's wasted here as well. So yeah, if you need any further indication that this is inspired by The Fly, it gets really obvious really quick. Apparently they also use scanners as a reference. I haven't seen scanners. I know obviously there's that scene where the head blows up. Which, yeah, there's a lot of head blowing up. Maybe is that why people use scanners? I don't know. I need to watch scanners. But it's very much like The Fly. And I mentioned this when I talked about the 2005 film, because they had those pods that look like the pods from The Fly. Here, it could be even more obvious, because just like Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, when he gets drunk and just jumps in the machine, that's what they do. Doom, Johnny Storm, Reed Richards get drunk and they're like, let's go into another dimension. Not exactly like that, but not far off. Ben Grimm, they're just like basically Reed like booty calls, not drunk calls, drunk dials him, and he's like, oh, Ben, I like you, come to the dimension, man, for no real reason. Sue Storm is smart enough to stay out of it, but it doesn't matter because she's going to get involved anyway. I feel like this is a missed opportunity. I feel like this could have been because look, I don't think I'm spoiling anything to say this is how they get their powers. I think you could have put Sue in the pod. She could have followed because she was like falling for Reed, and then there's that kind of drama there. And Doom can be the smarter, the older guy with a bit more experience. It's like, we couldn't do this. This is irresponsible, blah. Because that would be kind of a Doom thing. Doom is not really like this fun, spontaneous guy, really. And they go anyway against his wishes, and as a result, he ends up getting blasted and becoming what's the word? He becomes Doctor Doom. He becomes misshapen. I'm just going to write down in the video what word I'm trying to say, because I can't remember the word right now. And then you would have had a bit more friction between Reed and Doom as well. And also, Doom would have kind of had the moral high ground, which would have been interesting. But no, they all go to the dimension, everyone except Sue. And wouldn't you know it, once they get to this dimension, this horrible, like, jagged rock volcano mountain dimension, which is so boring visually. They made it worse as well. Like, the trailers, it wasn't anything original, but it looked kind of cool, where it was just like basically a lava kind of thing, which nothing new. But now they just made it glowy green, which seems like overkill. It just looks stupid. It just reeks of kind of like put some special effects in. Not very good. And yeah, as soon as they get there, this nightmare dimension, straight away they're like, put down the US flag, USA, USA. We claim this dimension for the United States of America. It's like, what? That seems like very out of place in the film. But anyway, that's what Ben Grimm does. And as soon as they get here, they become morons. They obviously went to the Prometheus school of being a scientist, where they're like, hey, we don't need logic now, we're in another dimension. Like, Doom just runs up and throws his hand into a load of green goo. And the goo is like, what's going on? And the goo explodes. So they have to run away from the goo. Doom falls into the goo. Dr. Doom, sorry. They manage to escape into the pods while the planet is exploding. And this is something where I'm like, hey, they had an idea here, but again, it's not fully formed. And that kind of sums up the movie. Because one thing I talked about in all of these videos I've done, I think, is that, like, why does the Fantastic Four get those powers? Like, why is he on fire? Why is he stretching? And I like the best explanation I've come to, and the one I was talking about a lot, is elemental. Fire, water, earth, air. This time they like try to explain it. So like the Thing gets in his pod and a load of rocks are thrown in, so I guess he merges with the rocks. And Johnny catches fire. I don't remember how he catches fire, but you're like, oh, he merged with the fire. I don't know what happened with Reed, that he ended up stretchy. And I definitely don't know what happened that Sue got a blast of something when they came through back into the Baxter building and ends up being invisible air. I don't know, she got a blast of air and now she can disappear. I don't know. But yeah, that's how our Fantastic Four get their powers. And of course, Doom is now stranded on Planet Zero, covered in goo, seemingly dead. But of course, he's not. And this is where we probably get, I want to say, the strongest scene in the film. But also, it's not in fitting with the rest of the film. And also, it's kind of like the pitch for what this film wanted to be. It's what the buzzword, because everyone's like, oh, it's a Cronenberg body horror. And it is, sort of, at times. But only for a couple of scenes. It feels like not a fully fleshed out idea. To be honest, this scene kind of reminded me of, like, is it like, what's his guy's name? Ari Shankar? I think the guy's name is. He did those bootleg fan films. Like, he did one for The Punisher, he did one for Venom, he did one for Power Rangers, where like they basically do like gritty reboots of properties they'd never really be able to do as fan films with established IP. And here it's like, it kind of feels like that for the Fantastic Four, because it's so gritty and over the top, where like he wakes up and like it's just a nightmare. Everyone's suffering and he's like horribly stretched out, and it's like terrifying. You're like, whoa. And it's this point where I was like, man, this is the Fantastic Four. This cheesy, like, oh, you know, flame on, slobbering time. That cheesy shit. They were like, yeah, let's use that as a horror film, and the horrors of not being able to control your own body. I'm like, what the hell? That was really crazy. I also was like, man, there's no way any kid could enjoy this, because most of this film, I'll be honest, is just pretty boring. And this is terrifying if you're a kid. Not great. So I don't know who this is meant to satisfy. It's not Cronenberg enough for Cronenberg fans. It's boring for most superhero fans. And terrifying for kids, or boring. Either way, not great for anyone, really. But yeah, that's kind of like probably the pitch, the strongest pitch for the film itself, I guess. That, you know, it's the body horror, and that's the scene that did it. And this is also around the time where the film changes completely, and noticeably so. So, like, we have the scenes of them waking up with their powers, you know. Johnny's on fire, and he's like, oh, I'm on fire, I'm burning, you know, we're like, oh, horrible kind of stuff. Reed, his limbs are all stretched out, which is one thing that's really funny. I thought, like, they, like, tie him up, but they put, like, just one strap around his arm with his stretched out arm, so he just unstretches his arm and gets him. I'm like, well, that was your restraint, well done. And he sees, like, the thing covered in rocks, and he's just, like, basically screaming, like, Reed, ah! And you're like, what the fuck? And Reed just, nopes out of there. He just runs away. By the way, can I just say this? I hate Reed Richards in this film. He's so horrible. He's the worst. He's the worst in this film. He's awful. He runs away, and then we cut to a year later. Apparently, in one version of the script, this was going to be 7 years later. Wow, imagine that. 7 years they would have taken a jump here. But in general, this is where it seems like it feels like this is where any vision the film did have is completely gone. I think I don't know, is this confirmed? It certainly seems what everyone suggests. This is basically where Josh Trank's film ends, and the rest is like studio, mangled, messed up. Frankenstein going, oh yeah, look at I'm wearing a Frankenstein shirt. Total coincidence. You know, that means nothing if you're listening to the audio version. You just heard a creaky chair as I stood up and showed the camera on my t-shirt, but there you go. Anyway, it's alive. So this is what we have here. We have kind of 2/3 of one film and 1/3 of a different film in a weird way. So in this year gap, a lot has sort of happened. Okay? Seemingly this is all a lot of reshoot stuff. I don't think all of it is, but certainly massive chunks of it. Certainly I would imagine parts would seem pretty consistent with Josh Trank's vision itself anyway. But the thing is now working for the government, the military. He seemingly killed like 40-something people. Like, wow, yeah, that's great. Buy a toy of the thing, kids. He killed a lot of people. And he's working for the government. Johnny is training to start doing missions for the government. They don't seem to have much of a relationship in general, to be honest. Sue, we also see her doing her powers. And that's the thing, like, it just jumps to them being like, just put a lot of scenes of them using their powers. And it's not like the effects are terrible or anything. Like, the effects are actually pretty good. I would say, like, the Thing looks probably better than he's ever looked. He's this weird, jagged CGI thing. The Thing should always be CGI going forward, in my opinion. As much as there's kind of a kitschy appeal of the suit, the CGI looks better. Although his face looks a little weird. I don't know about his eyes. But anyway, I mean, the stretchy thing is fine. Pretty good. Probably better than it has in the other films. The Human Torch, I think he looks a bit creepy. Like his face especially. He has like these weird, like, empty eyes. But not terrible. It looks okay. I mean, it could be a bit more visually interesting. But anyway, I actually do think I might have preferred the last film's Human Torch effects. But anyway, Kate Mara is like... one thing I thought was stupid about Kate Mara's powers, they're like a bit too showy. And obviously they want this to be kind of cool and unseen, but like they should be subtle. You know, she's invisible, and meanwhile she's like all these big purpley blue balloons and stuff, and you're like, whoa, come on, like that's very visible. The other effects, I mean, Doctor Doom, we'll get to him soon enough, but yeah, so the effects aren't terrible, you know, but it is weird that we just get all these scenes of them using their powers kind of seemingly out of nowhere to just be like, oh, we need some Fantastic Four hero stuff, come on. And that's basically what this is. It's like them, like, just put in some scenes with some superhero stuff because people are falling asleep. Wake them up. So Reed is on the run in South America like some sort of Nazi. So he's like, oh, I was so bad for what I did for the thing. And so again, I hate Reed. Hate him. He does do something I mentioned last week, which you can do in the comics, which is I'm like, why don't they use this more? Where he's like stretches his face into someone else. And then I saw the effect and it was terrifying. I was like, you know what, don't do it more. We're good. Don't do it again. We briefly get a sort of action scene that's kind of interesting where he's fighting guys with the stretchy bars. I'm like, hey, that was almost interesting. And then the thing drops in and I'm like, oh, we're going to get the thing and Reed fighting. Finally, the movie's going to do something interesting. And no, it avoids that. Thank God, that nearly got exciting for a second. So, yeah, then of course they're just sitting around moping, like most of the film is, them just sitting around. At this point, I wrote down teenage moping genius heroes. I don't know, is that anything? But it certainly summed up the movie. I mean, I don't know, are they meant to be? I think they're meant to be teenagers. They're certainly moping. They don't come off like geniuses, and they don't come off like heroes. So I don't know. Not maybe just the moping part, but definitely that. This is again when they're like, "Hey, we need an ending now," because I think there's like 20 minutes left in the film at this point. So they send the army into Planet Zero. Ugh, I hate that name. And Doom is there. You thought he was dead? No, we didn't. But anyway, he somehow found a cloak on this weird dimension. By the way, that turns out is not just glowy green stuff. There's also some green fabric knocking about. Doom's design is terrible. It is horrible to look at. It looks like he's covered in tinfoil with some glowy things. I mean, they totally killed any screen presence he could have as well. Like, Doom is meant to be this like cool, intimidating character. Like, oh, I am Doom, you know. He doesn't really move around. You can't even see like his mouth never moves. He's just very rigid. Basically, what happens is his suit is melted to him, or like, I don't know, they merged. Which again, in theory, that could have been interesting, but it looks like shit. The effect is just not good. Very dull design. I understand what they were going for, but it's not well executed either. And look, even if this wasn't Doom, if this is meant to be another character, any character, a new character even, it's just a very bland, boring design. Okay? I know at some point in one version of the script, it was going to be that he was a kind of a herald for Galactus, so basically he would be the Silver Surfer, which makes a little bit more sense, but still not a good design. I heard at one point he was going to be a Doom bot. Again, why? Again, it doesn't sound like this film ever could have been fantastic when you hear also some of this stuff, pun intended. But anyway, that's when he comes back to Earth, and this is one of the cool moments in the film where he's literally just going around exploding people's heads, and I'm like, holy crap, kids aren't going to like this. I'm like, this is really cool. And then he kills Tim Blake Nelson, by the way. He also kills Reggie Cathy. So there goes the grown-up in the movie. I guess he then just forgets he can do that. He forgets he can explode things, I think. So, yeah. He goes back to his... I don't know why. He's just like, oh, you know, I don't need this Earth. I'm going into this dimension. I'm going to destroy Earth. Because apparently he's like a thing that's going to turn the Earth into a black hole or something. I don't know. Who cares? And the Fantastic Four are like, we need to stop him. But, you know, you get some cool things here where Sue is like flying... with the rest of the Fantastic Four on a bubble, and the Human Torch is flying alongside him. I'm like, that's very comic booky, and clearly not fitting with the rest of the movie at all. So they go into the dimension and they fight him. Now, I have very few notes about the ending, to be honest, for the fight, because it just was really, really boring. It's, you know, you thought we were done with sky beams, but 2015, Fox hadn't got the memo yet, because, man, they got a big blue sky beam. And we got a weird Ghostbusters reference. I referenced Ghostbusters when I was on the 2005 one. This time they're a bit more deliberate when he turns around and literally says,
There is no victor. There is only doom.
What, as in there is no Dana, only Zool from Ghostbusters? What is that about?
There is no Dana. There is only Zool.
It's just a very strange thing to put in there, especially in a series. Like, was that like the comedy beat? not very funny. Not very good. There's like a big fight scene. They use some of their powers here. Sue can turn other things invisible. That's kind of cool. And then I can't even like they end up getting Doom. Like, I don't know, does he go into a sky beam or something and gets dissolved? I don't care. I tuned out at this point. It wasn't very interesting either way.
It's clobbering time!
And the Fantastic Four win. They go back through the portal, and there's just a massive, massive, massive crater that they destroyed. And they kind of stand there looking proud. I'm like, look what you've done. Like, this is all your fault. Like, you put people in this dimension. If you had just not gotten drugged, this might have gone a bit better. And that's I won't say that's the end, because we still have two very ham-fisted things that I think they threw in for like comic lore, but they beat it. It's a pretty underwhelming team shot. The whole ending is underwhelming. They move. Oh no, sorry. First they threaten the government. Remember when Superman like goes to a satellite and he's like, oh, I'll do my own thing, General, and you're like, that's cool, but also you're like, oh, Superman could go crazy anytime and kill everyone. Like they're like, oh, you have to answer for this and do this, and they're like, we don't answer to anyone, we don't operate without oversight. And they're like, what are you going to do? And they're like, and thing is like, Urgh. So it's like, oh, okay. So like, in other words, if the government tries to stop you from creating another massive hole or going to another dimension and causing a possibly world-ending catastrophe, you beat them up. Brilliant. Well done. Our heroes, ladies and gentlemen.
And what if we say no?
Say yes.
And they end up being relocated to Central City. I think that was their first base in the comics. I mean, Central City normally reminds me of the Flash anyway. But yeah, I don't know why they didn't just put them in the Baxter Building, but I guess they kind of shot their water with that one by having the Baxter Building in it early. Either way, that's sort of the end of the film, except we get two really ham-fisted things. Remember how I've said throughout this that one of the things I love that works is the Human Torch and Thing dynamic. There's none of that in this film until the very end. Someone was like, we have to put that in the film. We have to show that we know comics, because this is for comic book fans. This weird body horror film. And it really just made me go, whoa, man. At one point, like at the very end, everything's good. And the Human Torch just goes,
How about two guys, a girl, and the thing that nobody wanted?
Out of nowhere. And you're like, whoa, man, settle down. That's what I'm called for. A bit harsh, like. Like, that was really weird. Out of nowhere, he was mean. I was like, man, Johnny Storm, that was just uncalled for, sir. Now, on the plus side, we're like, we haven't got a name yet. What are we going to call ourselves? And they look around, they're like, what do you think of this place? And he goes,
Gotta say, it's fantastic.
Say that again?
well, you never would have called for the name Fantastic. That's really ham-fisted. Thank God. Now they're called Fantastic Four. We get the awkward title, the Fantastic Four, where the 4 is the A. Hence Fantastic Four, or Fanforstic, as people have come to know it. Well, that's my review. I'll go into my thoughts in a minute, but you know what? Let's hear from a different perspective. Let's hear the review of the director himself, sort of. the sometimes director of Fantastic. The sometimes director of Fantastic Four, Josh Trank, ladies and gentlemen. He gave the film 2 stars in a letterbox review he posted in November 2019, saying the movie's alright. He actually thought it was better than he remembered. He thought, I think he said, like 2 weeks after it came out, but he was like totally off his rocker at that point. I can't remember his actual phrase. He was heavily traumatized, was what he said, not off his rocker. He said he expected it to be worse than it was. He gives props to the cast and says there is a movie in there somewhere and they deserve to be in that movie, and clearly thought they were making that movie. And he says there are 2 different movies in there competing to be that movie. Frankenstein cut, eh? Again, he then says something that I think is very true of the production of this and the final results. I was 29 years old, making my second film in a situation more complicated than anything, a second-time filmmaker should have walked into. That said, I don't regret any of it. It's part of me. Like I said, he was out of his depth. He was under a lot of pressure. I don't think that defends his actions. It sounds like he wasn't very good to deal with, for whatever reason. The studio put a lot of pressure on him as well. And it felt like just they fucked up on both sides. And that's what we ended up with. Fantastic Four. To date, the last cinematic adaptation of Fantastic Four. Of course, they're going to be rebooted in the MCU in a couple of years from director John Watts. So what do I think of this film? And what do I think of the series as a whole, I suppose? Well, let me say this, right? I appreciate a big swing, even if it's a miss, okay? And I think this is mostly a miss, to be fair. But being like, let's make a body horror film of the Fantastic Four, let's make it dark and gritty. I'm like, I don't think that's a good approach, but I gotta at least be like, hey, they had some bit of an idea. They had something new and something different, even if it didn't work and was probably a bad idea. I'm like, hey, they tried something. Now, it's awful. It's not a good film. I don't think it's as bad as everyone says. I'll give it that much. For me, I was mostly bored. I was bored, mildly interested, and then bored again. Then we got to the ending. The ending I just thought was dull as much as it tried to be interesting. I think the cast could do a lot better job. No one did them justice here, including Marvel Comics, by the way. Marvel Comics literally killed off the actor, not the Fantastic Four. They killed off the actors from the Fantastic Four. Like, wow, that's petty. Oh, man. But yeah, that's the 2015 Fantastic Four. It's not good. It's kind of interesting when you know the story behind it, but I think it's only interesting in that regard. It's really obvious where the reshoots are, because Kate Mara is wearing a terrible, terrible wig that is in some shots and then not in other shots, so it's like really weirdly mixed together. And also, I think Miles Teller, sometimes he has facial hair, sometimes he doesn't. It goes back and forth as well. It's just terrible in that regard. But, you know, is it the best Fantastic Four film? No. And that brings me to the question of what is the best Fantastic Four film? And, it's kind of weird because, like, I think probably the best Fantastic Four film is Rise of the Silver Surfer. But it's, like, barely better. And I want to give a shout out to the Roger Corman one. The Roger Corman film, like, if it was properly released and if they kind of gave it a bit of money and properly got behind it, like, that film has heart, and I feel like they actually care. They tried to do as best as they could, and I don't get that from any of these other films. I feel like if they had, like, the time and the budget and they released it properly and did it the justice it deserves, at least releasing the film, I think that could have been like a sort of a fun film. But regardless, none of these films are very good or very entertaining. I will probably never watch them ever again unless I really, really have to. And that is it for the ReWatcher as I've dived into these Fantastic Four films throughout May. I could have taken May off. I kind of wish I had. But, you know, that's where we leave it.